Welcome to Honey Do Me, a podcast that goes into the bedroom and beyond, hosted by Emma Norman
and Cass Anderson. Here at Honey Do Me, we don't have all the answers, so we chat with experts, educators, and badass changemakers to get them.
We are here to remind our listeners and ourselves that what we're going through is normal, that we are worthy of love and pleasure,
and that we are all in this together. So tell us, honey, how do you do you?
Sing 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1. 'Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. 'Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. 'Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it.
Hello, hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
I'm doing well. I have a Boochcraft, a hard kombucha, and so you know what? I'm happy.
You're ready to go. Do you think when people ask you, how are you, they want a true answer?
No one gives a fuck.
Did you want a true answer just then?
I always want a true answer from you because I actually care about you.
Thank you.
I think in passing, people want to hear you're good. So
That's fair.
yeah, that's what I would say.
Well, today on the podcast, we get back to the basics.
Something that was much needed, I think. A good way to just start fresh and begin.
I agree. I think, sometimes we forget that we need to have a strong foundation in order to build a strong building. What do you build on foundations?
Oh my God.
Building of sexuality.
Yes. You know what? I loved where you went with that. But also, if I could note, I think it's great to acknowledge too that, everyone that is listening, and me included with our friendship, we all come from different sexual education backgrounds.
Yes, we do.
And different journeys. And I think even for me, some of the stuff we talked on and that I wanted to ask questions about were things that I'm just starting to learn and to explore. And especially once I went to college and was in a different state, I was able to explore more because of just different people and different circumstances. So I think it's great to get back to the basics.
I agree. And I think another really cool thing about this topic in particular is that it's very shame busting. I think when we go back to the basics and we really learn oh yeah, that's normal. That's what a healthy body does. It helps us work through a lot of the things that can be thought of or we are told are shameful. So whether that's vaginal discharge or how your labia look.
Absolutely. And even asking those questions themselves can feel shaming when you're like, okay, wait, what's my vagina and what's my vulva then? And you're getting confused about the difference and the locale of each. Those are questions you can be embarrassed about. And as a woman, I would be like, I don't know which one is the difference because I fuck up on saying which one too. So even asking those questions is hard.
It starts to feel too late.
Right.
It's too late for me to not know that. But the thing is, we have a shitty sex education system. We just do. That's it. And so it shouldn't be shameful. It shouldn't be embarrassing to ask those questions. It doesn't mean that that's true.
Right.
So that's why we are so excited to have Jordan Donnell on the podcast today. She is all the things. She's a physician's assistant, a sex educator, an intimacy coach, and she is just truly amazing and gives us all of that basic information that we need to build a strong foundation to build our strong sexuality building. Because that's what you build on foundations.
Yes. I think it was great. I was so excited when we came across Jordan because I loved the idea of combining sex educator, intimacy coach with a physician's assistant. I think
a medical professional.
I think that's a great space to ask your embarrassing whatever questions and get accurate responses and get these questions that maybe you're not getting from your own healthcare professionals that don't have a super sex positive education in their background. So I think that was a great choice of us.
We did so good. But really, Jordan offers amazing sex positive, evidence-based information. And that is so, so important. So we are so excited to share that all with you. And we'll see you on the other side. Well, hi, Jordan. How are you?
Welcome to Honey Do Me.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to chat with you guys today.
We're super excited to have you here.
Yes, we are. We've been planning questions for quite a while about all things vaginas. So we're very excited.
We actually like to start out by having you just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
So I am Jordan. I am a physician assistant by trade, and I am the owner of a podcast called Vaginas, Vulvas, and Vibrators. I recently started that podcast because I saw that there was a huge need for women's health awareness and helping normalize the things that are out there that are happening to women. So I had started that podcast, and I work in primary care. However, my preference is women's health.
So have you always been someone that wanted to do podcasting or something to like get close to women, to like talk to them really about their needs? Or did it kind of come up when you started your career as a physician's assistant and you're like, you know what? We need a better way to talk to women. Let's start a podcast.
So that is a really great question. I actually have always been interested in women's health ever since I was a teenager. I was kind of like that go-to girl for all of my friends when they had sexual health questions, birth control questions, weird vagina questions.
She's my girl for that, so I get that.
Yes. And I actually joined Pure Romance when I was 21 as a consultant. And that is what really opened up my door as far as how little women's health education is out there and how little women are talking about their bodies. And
what is Pure Romance? I don't know what that is personally.
So Pure Romance is an in-home party planning company for women. So it's kind of like Pampered Chef, Mary Kay, but it's bath and beauty products and relationship enhancement items.
Ooh. Oh, okay. Well, that's super fun. So that kind of turned you to going down this route a little bit?
Exactly. So I was doing that. And at the time I was flight attending. And then I went to PA school. And then I used my business to support me through PA school. And then once I was done with PA school, I was working in fertility. And I incorporated my Pure Romance business with fertility and kind of like helping people work on their romance. Because when you're going through fertility treatments, reconnecting with your partner is really important. And then after that, I was doing family practice and kind of became the women's health guru at all of my offices.
Would you say that you had like a pretty strong sexual education growing up, or did you kind of seek it out on your own?
That is a really good question. So my mom and I actually had a lot of conversations, but I would say that I did a lot of research on my own and a lot of trial and error.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think if I asked my parents any questions, they'd be like, we can talk about it if you really want to. Like I told Guess when we were first becoming friends, they gave me like a body book when I was very young that they would just send me with and hope that I would kind of research that and understand it. But yeah, I kind of had to do a lot of trial and error on my own.
My mom was incredibly honest, like very forward. I never had to bring anything up because she was always going to bring it up in a moment when I didn't necessarily want to talk about it, maybe even around my friends. So that was always very, very fun.
I've gotten a Farrah talk before.
Yeah, you have. That's my mom.
Yeah. My mom is pretty open about it, but we don't talk about orgasms as kids. We don't talk about, the actual act of sex. We talk about, if you have sex, you're going to get pregnant. Don't get pregnant.
Right.
And so that was kind of my experience. So you don't talk about all the fun stuff, really.
Definitely.
Yeah, you don't know how to do the fun stuff. You don't know how to make sure you're doing the fun stuff for yourself and for your partner to like have a good time. And that's all really important information that we're looking for people like you to help tell us about, and we're trying to spread it.
I think we should just dive into it then. And we'd love to just start out with some basics. If we could talk a little bit about some of like the real names for female genitalia.
Where it is, what she does, how it looks.
Yes.
What it's supposed to do.
So, this is one of my favorite things to talk about. And surprisingly, I see women of all ages, but you would be amazed at how many women 40 plus don't know the name of their female anatomy. And they always are coming to me and they're like, my vagina hurts. I'm like, well, describe more to me what that is. And I'm like, that's actually not your vagina. That's your vulva. And your vagina and vulva are not the same thing. So what I always like to tell ladies to do is make a peace sign and put your thumb in the middle, flip it upside down. And that is kind of like your little anatomy.
Oh, cute.
I love
what do you
that
call those
so
things?
much.
Yeah. Your hand diagram thing.
It's your model.
Yes.
Yeah.
My
hand
model. Yes. So if you look at that, the top is going to be like your mons pubis. And then the fingers are going to be your labia. The thumb is your clitoris. And those make up your vulva. Below your clitoris would be your urethra, which is where urine comes out of. And then below that is your vagina or your vaginal entrance. And that is where penetration occurs during sex.
Okay. I love that hand model. It's perfect. How did you come up with that? Were you taught it or did you make it up yourself?
So I actually stole that from a pure romance consultant. That's what she always does at her parties to explain it. And then actually I used it for my logo for my podcast. It's
you totally
V with
did.
the thumb in the middle.
Oh, that's so
that.
cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that's perfect. Good way to like incorporate it in there.
Yeah. Very cute and stylish.
Very cute. So let's talk about labia. There's two of them, two sets, two different sets. There's outer, inner, and I want to talk a little bit about like labia normalization. So like for the inner lips specifically, kind of like you go off a little bit.
Okay. So this is a wonderful question. And I think a lot of women don't realize that everybody is different. Some ladies are going to have long inner labia. Some are going to have short inner labia. Some are going to have different colors. I mean, it varies. They may not be symmetric. They may be symmetric. Anything under the sun you can have, and it is all normal.
And it's just your genes, right? It's just like kind of how you were. It's not like you masturbated too much as a kid, which I've heard a rumor. Yeah, I've heard that.
Nope.
Yeah. So it's just how you were born. It's just your genes.
It is how you're born. And, there are certain times when it can change. So I have seen like with pregnancy, if you have a lot of fluid retention, in one particular case, this lady's labia did grow and then they didn't shrink up and she ended up having a labiaplasty because they were getting in the way during intercourse.
Oh, wow. What are your thoughts on labiaplasties as like a new, like mainstream kind of plastic surgery that people are getting a lot of? I've seen it on Botched, I guess. Maybe not a lot, but like I've seen it on TV.
Oh yeah, it's a new thing. Well, I don't know how new it is, but in plastic surgery, they're definitely doing it more. And I would say, do you, whatever makes you happy. If you are comfortable with your decision and that's what you want to do it. If you don't care, then that's fine too.
Yeah. I think a good step though is definitely talking about it more, like talking about what you just said, like normalizing the differences, getting that out there and talking just about how we're all just different and it's fucking great. Like it's fine. And men need to know that or partners, everyone needs to know it.
I think like personally, I've felt a lot of shame around my labia. And I think like a lot of times when I was with a partner and they would offer to go down on me, I would say no, because I was so nervous about like the way I looked or anything like that. But I would, brush it off as I'm just not into that, which like I am. But I don't know. It just really sucks. Like I really cheated myself out of so much pleasure because I was so ashamed of something that's so normal. And I just hadn't seen it because I don't know. We don't show labias in a lot of places except for in porn. And so they're like, I don't know. I don't want to say perfect because I think everyone is perfect the way that they are, but they're just a very,
it's a streamlined version of what
like
media wants labia
kind
to
that would
look
fit
like.
in like a very tiny bikini is what I'm picturing.
Yes. All of those very small bikini bottoms that you see. It's like, that can't be real.
It's like one lip or the other at that point.
Yep. Well, and like if you think about it, as we're growing up, we talk about how like penises are all different with different shapes, different sizes, different colors, different circumcision, uncircumcised, all of that stuff. But we're not talking about how our genitalia are different. And that's okay. It's just how we're made.
Yeah. It's not fair. Very penis centric education, which
yes,
it's not It's not fair. God damn it.
Let's jump into the clitoris a little bit. You told us where it is. Can you talk a little more about what it does and what it looks like?
Yeah, because I know it doesn't just stop here where my thumb is.
Exactly. So the clitoris, it has over 8,000 nerve endings, and you only see the tip. It actually looks like a wishbone. So if you do that hand model again and you look at it from the side, the thumb kind of extends back into the body, and that wishbone kind of goes around the vaginal canal and can be stimulated internally. And that's kind of where the GSpot is all where the nerve endings are.
Oh, okay. So is that the same for everyone? I mean, there's a lot of like, I don't know, stuff about G-spots, but like finding it, telling your partner where it is. Like, is it just the same?
So the G-spot is actually a whole nother topic of its own. And it is, some studies say that everybody has one, but there's not really any data that proves that everybody has one. So we don't really know. That being said, some women will tell you they absolutely have one and they found it and they know how to pleasure it. And other women will say they haven't found it or they don't like that kind of stimulation either. And the G-spot is usually about 2 to 3 inches in on the front side of your vaginal canal. And the best way to stimulate it is with a come hither motion, and using that to stimulate that G-spot.
We need to put like a video side by side with our podcast or something on Instagram. Do all our different hand stuff.
Before we do want to jump into a little bit more about sex, but one more question that we had about kind of the basics was if you could talk a little bit about, I guess it's kind of 2 different things, but like vaginal lubrication as well as just like discharge and different kind of stuff.
Yes. So discharge and vaginal lubrication are a common question. And I actually have been asked this on other podcasts too, but it is normal to have vaginal discharge. There is a wide variety. Sometimes, depending on the time of the month, you're going to have different discharge. Sometimes it's going to be clear, more like a sticky egg white. It might be more of a creamy, like whitish color. That's totally normal. Things that are abnormal would be like a yellow, green discharge, fishy smell, cottage cheese-like discharge. But everybody has discharge, totally normal. I think one of the biggest things is learning what your normal smell of discharge is and knowing how you normally smell. Because a lot of women think that they have abnormal discharge, but it's just totally their normal odor. And it can change over time too. And it changes after sex too. Sometimes you might notice that.
Okay. I was going to ask what kind of events could change it. Like would pregnancy change it?
So pregnancy definitely can change the amount of discharge. A lot of times ladies will have more discharge. Menopause, a lot of ladies are going to tell you they have less vaginal secretions and are actually experiencing more vaginal dryness due to the lack of estrogen. Birth control pills, okay, that can all affect your vaginal secretions. Antihistamines, so your allergy medications, they're going to dry up everything in your face, but they're not just drying that up, they're drying everything up. And
that's so, I would have never thought of that. I would have never thought antihistamines could do anything besides my allergies.
Yep.
What are some things you could do to prevent like yeast infections?
I would recommend, some of the biggest things would be don't wear tight clothes, cotton undies. After you work out or like are swimming or whatnot, if you're in wet clothes, change out of them, get into something dry right away. Using pH balanced water-based lubricants are really helpful too. We can talk about using a lubricant as well if you'd like, but lubricants are good. And then pH balanced body washes are really helpful as well, because a lot of body wash actually will throw off your pH. And part of keeping all that bacteria normalized is keeping the pH balanced. And when that gets off is when the bad bacteria can kind of overgrow and can create like your bacterial vaginosis, your yeast infections, things like that.
Can we talk about which parts of the female anatomy are supposed to be like washed with like soap?
Yeah, because I've heard some rumors.
I would say, I think it kind of depends.
Okay.
So for me, what I would probably recommend my patients is as long as you're washing with like water on the regular, that's all you actually really need. And all you really need to do is going to be washing like your vulva and your labia. You don't need to wash inside your vagina. You don't need to douche. Don't douche, actually. Just don't do it. That throws off your pH balance.
That's the little Q-tip thing.
So it's like a bottle with a lid on it, like a kind of like a tampon applicator like lid, and you stick it in, and the solution is like water vinegar mix a lot of times, and you like squeeze it in, and it like rinses it out, and then it flushes out.
That can't be right. I wouldn't. No.
I wonder who invented that.
Yeah, I'm not going to pay more to do something that she's already doing, especially adding
Exactly.
vinegar. What the fuck?
Not gonna add vinegar.
Okay, yeah, no to douching. And Summer's Eve, people use that like it's water, right? Like I've heard things that like people like kind of get messed up because they use it like on the inside and you're not supposed to, but they kind of advertise for you to like use it daily.
The thing that I would be cautious about with Summer's Eve is it is fragranted a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
And those fragrances are going to throw off potentially, if you're a really sensitive lady, it's going to throw off your pH balance, might irritate your skin, things like that.
I've seen fragrances in menstrual products as
Ew.
well. I remember in high school, I had to borrow a pad from a friend and it was scented and I wanted to vomit the entire time I was wearing it. I was like, I feel it. It was
I feel it. I smell it. I smell flowers. I smell me. It's
it
a lot.
didn't even smell like flowers. It smelled like, I don't know. It wasn't right.
Gross.
Yeah. I know there's some ladies that like it, but for a sensitive woman, definitely would stay away from anything scented.
Yeah.
Not judging anybody that likes scented menstrual products. I'm going to throw that out there. If that's your thing. That's your thing. It's just not my thing.
It's just not my thing. I just prefer not. Okay. Go off about lubricants. You were saying something that you could go off about it. So I want to hear it.
So lubricants are super, super important. Everybody should have a lubricant. And the reason being is different times of the month, you have different amounts of vaginal secretions. And 80% of women actually enjoy sex more with a lubricant. There are like the one that I always recommend to my patients is the Pure Romance Just Like Me. It's water-based, it's water-based, it's pH balanced, and it's comes in unscented. So you can put that on up to like 24 hours ahead of time.
Oh, wow.
And it's re-wets with your natural secretions. So it continues to work. So that's really nice. Your partner doesn't even need to know that you're using it. But lubricants also protect your vagina from friction and micro tears in the vaginal canal. And that's another spot where you can get bacteria and potentially get you that bacterial vaginosis, yeast infections, making you even more susceptible to sexually transmitted diseases or infections, things like that too.
See, because when I think of lubricants, like that's all amazing information. And I feel like when I was taught about lubricants or like we talked about lubricants, it was more of like a shameful thing to have to use. If like you need it during sex, that kind of means that like maybe something's not going right for either you or the man. I feel like there's like a weird stigma around lube.
I was wondering about like why we don't talk about lube more in sex education, because I was thinking about the first time I had sex and how much better it would have been if I had lube and how much less it would have hurt, because I can tell you it didn't feel good. And I don't really know, like, is it supposed to hurt the first time you have sex if you're having like penetrative sex? Is it supposed to hurt the first time?
So I think that's a good question. And I think it comes down to lack of education. And and also the stigma behind it's supposed to hurt during that first time. So mentally we're expecting it to hurt. We have all this anxiety and anticipation of pain. So that makes it amplify as well. So I think that kind of combined is why it hurts.
But there's also the hymen. Doesn't sometimes that rip and that can really hurt?
So the hymen actually doesn't have any nerve endings.
Okay.
And so it's got very few nerves. It's got very few blood flow to it as well. And so really the bleeding and the pain associated with the hymen isn't that much. But the hymen, do you want to talk about the hymen a little bit?
Yeah, go for it.
So the hymen is another one of those things where everybody's a little bit different. And Some ladies will have a partial hymen, but hymen actually has nothing to do with virginity and can be broken prior to losing or having penetrative intercourse. It can be broken from fingers, it can be broken from toys, it can be, broken for a variety of different reasons. And at the end of the day, not everybody has a full hymen. Some ladies will have a very small hymen, some ladies will have a complete hymen where they would need like a surgical procedure.
I had a friend that needed that. Her tampon got stuck in one of her first periods that she had because her hymen had moved over after she put in her tampon, or like it had like adjusted or something and it got stuck. And so that's when she realized that she needed surgery. And I had no idea that that was a thing that could happen. And that was terrifying because
Is she okay?
She's okay. She's, she's 10 years later and she's fine. But
we would love to talk a little bit about orgasms and what happens in the vagina, or I guess just overall, when you're having an orgasm.
So an orgasm by definition is kind of going to be those rhythmic motion or like rhythmic contractions of your muscles. And so usually that's going to be like your vaginal canal. It's going to pull on the ligaments inside your pelvic cavity, kind of incorporating your uterus. And there's some studies done on it, but on average, it's about 2 out to, I want to say like 40 rhythmic contractions over a handful of seconds.
We wanted to talk about female ejaculation as well. What is it and how do you know when it's happening?
So female ejaculation is when fluid comes out of the urethra that is not urine, that comes out. It can be associated with an orgasm, but it can also be not associated with an orgasm, and it's different for everybody. Most often, it's going to be achieved with GSpot stimulation, but not always. And the amount of fluid varies between every individual. So some ladies will just have a little bit. Some ladies, you may get a half cup to a cup or more of fluid. And the other thing with female ejaculation is that a lot of times it's like a process where you really have to relax. And a lot of times it'll feel like you're going to urinate. But if you just kind of breathe past that, it's not urinating. And you just relax and let it go. That's from the books that I've read. That's how it kind of describes it and what to do.
The only place I'd heard, well, I guess I've heard about female ejaculation from other places, but the only time that I really heard it talked about was in a Netflix documentary. I can't remember which one about porn. And they were like, oh yeah, it's just urine. It's just urine. Because they were teaching somebody how to be in porn, I guess. They were teaching a new woman. I don't really know. Porny. But yeah, they were just very insistent that it was just urine. That's all it is, because she was very concerned and she didn't know what it was and she was supposed to do it on camera. So it's nice to hear that it's
word. Yeah. I hate that word. I don't want to say it, but is that what that is then?
So female ejaculation and squirting would be synonymous. They're the same, yeah.
Okay. It's not a bad thing. I just don't like the word. And it's like moist. It's like those words for me. But
make up a new word for it right now. Go.
No. No.
There's the
word. Okay. I guess I'm still just trying to wrap my head around, because like, would that be when someone asks, like, did you come?
So I would say no. I would say that coming would be synonymous to like orgasming. Mm-hmm. You orgasmed, where ejaculating would be like squirting and different. Mm-hmm. But I think it probably just depends on what your definition is. And there's probably a variety of different definitions out there, but that's what I associate with coming and orgasming.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. I'm gonna use that too. That sounds good.
Take it and run with it.
Yeah.
We know you've talked a little bit about sex drive and libido on your podcast. I'm wondering if we can dive into that a little bit.
So libido is your sex drive, and sex drive can vary between individuals. There's a lot of different things that can impact your sex drive. So time of the month, A lot of ladies will find that during ovulation, their sex drive is a little bit more increased.
That's very true for me.
Yeah.
I wish. I wish something like that was true. My whole system has been jacked up since birth control, so I'm still working to get it back. I'm sorry, but keep continuing.
No, well, and birth control is definitely something that can also affect the sex drive. You also have menopause, pregnancy, anything with hormonal changes that can affect your sex drive. Chronic diseases can affect your sex drive. So, especially like with orgasms, if you have a disease that affects nerves and nerve endings, that can affect your sex drive. Anxiety medication and depression medication also has a huge impact on sex drive. And one of the number one side effects is anorgasmia, or the inability to orgasm. So that's one of the things to always keep an eye out for too. And I find a lot of patients have issues with that.
Is that true in men as well? Do you know if those medications?
I've seen it. Yep.
Okay. Just wondering if it's fairly distributed or not.
Is this fair to everyone? Because it sucks for me.
Well, and I think it's hard to say because more women are treated for anxiety and depression than men. Mm-hmm. And then at the same time, who's more likely to complain about the concern too?
Is there like any standard of like a healthy libido or a healthy sex drive, or is it very like individual?
I personally would say it's very individual and what you're happy with and happy with your relationship with. And for some people, that's going to be more than others. For others, I think there is also like a point of like your sex drive being too high as well, and it impacting your life too. So I think it kind of goes both ways, but depending on you and your relationship, or, your relationship with yourself, even, I think it just depends on what you feel best with.
Is there anything that impacts a high, like can create a high sex drive, like supplement, time of life, whatever that, is there anything I can take? No, I mean it different. Jesus.
I would say there absolutely is some things that you can do to manipulate it. One thing is any kind of hormone supplementation that can make a difference. So increasing your estrogen, increasing testosterone, but you really don't want to increase testosterone in women. So that can make an impact on your sex drive. The other thing, supposedly my family members have told me that 40 is for them when peak sex drive hit, and to look forward to that. However, I hear from other people that like premenopausal is when it tanks. So I think it's very individual.
Mm-hmm. I've heard of or I've seen it. I haven't bought it. It's very expensive. Like the moon juice sex dust. I feel like I see that everywhere. Okay,
what?
Don't look at me like that.
No, what is that? That sounds very...
Moon juice is
Ashland.
It's not Ashland. It's
okay.
LA.
All right.
It's a very, I don't know. It's just like a fancy vegan like cafe, and they have like products. I don't know.
What is in it?
I don't know. I have no idea.
I
didn't go that far.
If you're going to bring it up, I'm going to ask you questions.
I think there's adaptogens in it. Okay.
I don't know what adaptogens means.
Like mushrooms.
Oh.
Yeah. Maybe ashwagandha. Maybe chaga. I don't really know.
All right.
Yeah. Well, we've gone into a lot of the basics. And I think we've touched on this a little bit, but what are some signs of a healthy reproductive system?
Of a reproductive system or sex?
Of a healthy reproductive system.
How do I know when I'm on the right track? I have good discharge, or I don't know.
Yeah. Maybe there isn't an answer
Maybe
to that.
When do you know that you're on the wrong, when you need to go to a doctor?
I can answer that one.
Okay.
So something to kind of look out for when you're like, maybe I should go see a doctor would be like an abnormal odor. So a change in your vaginal odor, itching is always something. Changes in discharge. So like I mentioned earlier, the green, the yellow discharge, things like that, cottage cheese like discharge, those are all good indicators that something probably is going on and you should go see your provider.
Do you have any like things that commonly happen with like women our age?
There's a handful of common things that I see. It's going to be a lot of sexually transmitted diseases, and a lot of people who think they have UTIs, but it's actually more of a bacterial vaginosis after intercourse. I actually see a lot of that.
Because you're supposed to pee, right?
Yes. Yep. Making sure you urinate after you have sex is really important. But also coming back to that, using a lubricant. If you're not using a lubricant, you get those micro tears, which can increase the bacteria growth potential and lead to some type of infection. So that is probably what I most commonly see is ladies complaining of UTI symptoms, but it's not a UTI.
A quick question about the peeing. Does it have to be like a lot, or like, because sometimes like I don't have to pee a lot. Yeah. And so I pee a little bit and I'm like, was that enough? And then I think about it for a little while.
Yeah, I don't know if I got it all out.
Yeah. I don't know.
Well, I would just say as long as you're emptying your bladder. So if it's just a little bit, great. If it's a lot, great. The key is that during intercourse, you have all that friction that's put on your urethra, and it can cause bacteria to backflow into your bladder. Mm-hmm. And that is kind of what can happen. So when you pee, even if it's just a little bit, you're pushing that bacteria back out.
Until college, I didn't know that you had to pee after you had sex because that's like what was healthy. And I can remember for a significant amount of time having to go to the bathroom after having sex, like just as like an instinctive thing that I had to do. But I'm glad that I did it. And I didn't know that it was a thing until college.
I didn't know until I got a UTI with like the first time I had sex with this current partner.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was horrible. I'm just going to give a little background because it was the worst day. It was snowing. The streets you couldn't drive. So I had to walk to the doctor's office with a UTI. I wasn't like, now he's my fiance. So we're very, very close. But at that time, didn't know him as well. Didn't really want to talk to him about it. Was kind of angry at him, which isn't fair, but it is what it is. And so I walked in the snow probably 2 miles to my doctor's office with the UTI. And that's when I learned you have to pee after sex. So
wow. You'll never forget.
No, I don't forget now. I jump right up or walk right over.
So let's talk a little bit about prepping for your annual exam. Anything that women should be doing before this exam?
Not a damn thing. I think that's actually, I see a lot of patients that are like, I don't want you to do an exam today because I'm not ready for it. And at the end of the day, like, I don't care what it looks like. We don't care what it looks like. You know, hopefully you've showered in the last 24 hours, you know, but regular hygiene, nothing special. You don't need to shave for us. You don't need to wax for us. You don't need to do anything. Just come as you are. Mm-hmm. We're not paying attention to the differences. You know, we're not paying attention to the labia differences. We're not paying attention to the uniqueness per se of the vulva and the vagina, things like that. We're looking for medically necessary things. And so I hope that reassures listeners as well, because we're not analyzing it. I know, like, being a lady who has received pelvic exams, or I had recently done some fertility stuff, every time I went in, I was like, oh, I need to make sure, like, I totally did the same thing all my patients do. And I wanted to make sure I showered, make sure I was freshly groomed. And I know that they're not paying attention, but it's just something that I still want to do.
We're programmed. I know for me, one of the issues that I have with annual exams or just appointments in general is I have a million things that I want to talk about, and then I forget every single one of them. And then I just tell them I'm totally fine and everything is fantastic, when that is not true. So
you got to write them down. Mm-hmm. Write them down. And, you know, what I actually tell a lot of patients is, hey, we saw you for your first appointment. Let's follow up in a week or two. Write anything down that comes up over this period of time that you want to talk about. So like right now, I'm working with a couple of ladies who are having some period issues, and or one that has some questions about herpes, and she's not sure what her questions are yet. But I'm like, hey, let's schedule an appointment so that you can think about everything, write it all down, and then we can talk about what your questions are and get you solid information rather than Google and who knows what you're going to find.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Exactly. So it's okay to come in with like your paper and be like, okay, I have these questions. I need to get through them.
It's absolutely okay to bring in your paper, but depending on what your visit is for, your provider may only have a short amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
And so they may only be able to answer a couple of them. So know what your primary questions are, and then save the rest for another appointment and things like that. But keep that in mind. I tend to spend more time. If somebody has questions, I do tend to spend more time. But a lot of providers, due to the way it works, the system works, just don't have the time to answer 40 questions.
Right. Right. Your top 3.
Yeah.
Keep your top 3.
That's usually what you hear.
Do you have any last little tidbits?
I think that's all I got.
Wibbly
So I think we
wobbles?
can none of those.
Okay.
But I think we can move into
Okay.
our final segment.
This is the part where we love to do homework for honeys, where we talk about one actionable step that we can all do to start incorporating what you talked about today. So, Jordan, would you do the honor of assigning our homework for today?
Yes. So today's homework, I want you to go grab a mirror and take a look at your vulva. I want you to analyze it, see what it looks like. Is it symmetric, asymmetric? What color is it? Kind of learn what your normal is, so that in the future, sometime if something's going on, you can be able to identify what is abnormal. Embrace the uniqueness of your vulva.
Vulva power, man. I don't know.
Yes.
I've never said that in my life. Anyway, I love your homework. I think that's perfect. We all need to do that.
Yes. And we would love for you to let listeners know where they can connect with you.
Yes. So you can find me on Instagram at Jordan Donnell, JordanDnelle. And you can also find my podcast, Vaginas, Vulvas, and Vibrators, on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, you name it.
Which we love.
It's so good. Go listen.
Thank you so much to Jordan for being on the podcast today. We had so much fun going over all the basics and getting to ask all of our questions. And thank you so much to our listeners for tuning in.
And if you thought this information was as helpful as we did and you just want to keep it going with us, you can follow us on Instagram at honeydomepodcast, and you can head to our website, honeydomepodcast.com, and subscribe to our beautiful email list.
And what will they get?
You are going to get our freebie, which is currently a list of our 10 favorite sex things, Cass's game changers, Emma's non-negotiables.
And they're pretty good. We had a lot of fun with them.
They're pretty damn good. So please, if you have time, rate, review, and subscribe to Honey Do Me Podcast on Apple Podcasts. That helps spread all of this wonderful information. And the more people that have it, the better. We can just make a better world by sharing Honey Do Me Podcast.
There we go.
We'll see you next episode.
See you next week.